from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the program. If you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And there's a bunch of things, little things, big things, all sorts of things I want to talk about. I think the big news, if we're talking about politics in the 2024 election, and it is an election year, so we'll give some attention to that. Donaldus Magnus has been taunting Joel Baboso Biden about a debate. And there's been talk about a debate and talk about a debate. And finally, Joel Baboso Biden has come out in a video message. And Joel Baboso Biden says he is ready for a debate with Donaldus Magnus, El Trompito, the 45th president of these United States, El Presidente. Listen to this.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
I told you, don't sleep on Joel Baboso Biden. He may not know if he's coming or going, and while he's too busy falling up the stairs or falling off his bike in between ice cream cones, there's one thing that Joel Baboso Biden knows how to do, and that's how to land an occasional political punch. It's in his DNA. He's been a crooked retail politician his entire life. All he needs is to land is half a shot. Right, so that MSNBC and CNN and the rest of them can run and play that on loop and say, oh, look, remember when he tried to show up Trump at that debate? Trump will land 1,000,000 shots on him and win with the KO. But they will take that one shot, half a shot that Biden lands and try to make it look like it's the end of the, it's the end of the race. It's the end of the debate, just like he's trying to here. Now, I saw the debate. I saw the debate in 2020, and I don't remember Trump losing to Biden ever. But that's how he wants to frame it, so good on him. Now, this is also the same guy that says, well, you know what? I'm very, very happy, very, very happy to have a debate with Trump. And then he says, but these are my conditions. And he rolled out 1,000,000 different conditions. One of them was, it's got to be an empty room. Just imagine that, right? They're doing everything they can to throw Trump off his game. Now, the reality is Trump doesn't care if it's an empty room or not. Now, of course, you want to see Trump, as we say in Spanish, prendido. You want to see him on. Put him in a stadium with 50,000 people around him, right? And he's going to give you the best performance ever because, Trump thrives on people. He is the people's president. But Joel Baboso Biden is trying to do it. And guess what? Trump says, you know what? I'm in. I'm game. He's happy to do it. So as we get more of that information, I'll let you know. I know there's a couple of dates that they've discussed where they said, all right, we're going to do some debating. And the dates have been set. I think there's one in June. When's the other one count? September 10th. So as those come closer, we will keep you up to speed on everything that's going on there. Now, I want to bring your attention to something that is off the beaten path just a little bit. And it's about a small town in New Jersey named Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. Small town. I think it's either 1 square mile or 2 square miles. Tiny little town. The only reason I know it, it's because I live there. And this little town in New Jersey has very uneventful politics. It has in the entire time that I've been around here. I can share this with you. Bergen County sometimes has lively politics, but Ridgefield Park, not so much. But there is a young man who, man, where's my thing? I can't find it now. But there is a young man I don't want to mispronounce his name. It's either Akshar or Ashkar Mirza, Mirza. This kid's 19 years old. So he's a year older or just about the same age as my youngest daughter. And he has run for the town commission. You know, it's a commission-style government. The highest vote getter becomes the mayor. And most of the commissioners that ran last time were reelected. But there were some that didn't run, and there was an opening. And somebody who's a longtime person in the town, involved in town stuff, ran and was in like this statistical dead heat with this kid. Well, I'm seeing some early reports that show he's been ahead by 2 votes while they're counting absentee ballots and while they're counting provisional ballots. And just before the show, minutes before, from a not credible source, so I won't make that announcement here, but I read that they had finished counting and that he'd won the race. Now, I can't with any certitude say that at this moment, but I can say this kid running as a Republican, it's a nonpartisan election, but he is a Republican. This is so inspiring, right? Isn't it inspiring to see a young man, 19 years old, throw his hat in the ring for a race in a small town and actually make some headway? Because I think there comes a time when people get fed up with the politics status quo, right? The status quo of what's going on. And the body politic itself will reject the status quo. And they'll say, you know what? I've had enough. Enough is enough of this and that. Now, I don't know if that's the case here in this town. I can tell you the status quo is nice in this town, right? They clean the streets. They do a good job when there's snow. There's cops everywhere. It's, for the most part, a very safe, quaint, clean town. But what I can say is that people, especially those with kids in the school system, mine are not in the school system anymore, many of those people, they do keep their ear to the ground and they talk with one another. And many of them may want new blood. And obviously somebody's voting for this guy because he throws his hat in the ring and he's doing well. So to that, I have to say congratulations to in what I'm going to call future Commissioner Mirza, because it's not every day you see a teenager throw their hat in the ring for a small town election and actually win against, incumbents and whatnot. And a little bit later, we're going to talk about somebody who wrote the book on incumbents. But I just wanted to share that with you right now because we're talking about Trump and Biden and debates and whatnot. And I thought, man, what a good time to mention that. So that's the tiny town of Ridgefield Park, New Jersey, Bergen County, New Jersey. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And, of course, Biden's friends, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Scarborough, the usual suspects over at CNN and MSNBC. Well, they were chiming in saying, no, look, Nancy Pelosi says she would never get on stage with Donald Trump. Of course she wouldn't. He'd rip her to shreds, and she knows it. And this is why they're trying to change the format and control Trump as best they can, similar to what they did last time, so that they could spend more time, sorry, President Trump, no, sir, Mr. Trump, no, sir, Mr. Trump, and just make it look like he's misbehaving when they hit him with a bunch of mistruths and he has to sit there and defend himself. And, of course, that's all done, to make a show, and that's exactly what they'll do. So we'll get into a little bit of that a little bit more ahead. Yesterday, we spoke about the World Health Organization, which is one of the many tentacles of the United Nations. And they're ever encroaching on our sovereignty any way they can. They want power. They want control. They want to be involved. And there was this treaty, and then there was a rejection of this treaty that we discussed, and now they want to call it an agreement, but it's still there. And basically it is when there is a pandemic, the United States wants to follow the protocol that the UN is providing, that the World Health Organization is providing, the WHO, instead of saying, hey, look, we're going to do our own thing. This is a very bad idea. This relinquishes the sovereignty of the country, at least from a medical perspective, and gives it to the biggest globalist entity out there, the World Health Organization. So I want to get to the bottom of that with somebody who is an expert. I'm going to call him an expert because he's a professor of health policy at Stanford University. He is somebody that was outspoken on protecting children during COVID. He's been on this program before, and I'm happy to bring him back. Dr. J. Bhatacharya is going to join us shortly, so don't miss that. And, of course, your phone calls, always welcome. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The World Health Organization has spent months working to create the world's first pandemic treaty. It's designed to help countries prepare for Disease X. That's the name of the next global outbreak. The WHO's Director General says countries banding together to prepare is essential.
That agreement can help us to prepare for the future in a better way, because this is about a common enemy. And without a shared response, starting from the preparedness, we will face the same problem as COVID.
But Republican lawmakers and others warn the treaty is an international power grab orchestrated by China. Pro-Life Caucus co-chair Congressman Chris Smith believes U.S. tax dollars would be going towards abortions. Abortion has been included in the WHO documents as essential health services.
Article 6 of the agreement calls for the continuing provision of essential health services, which includes abortion on demand. There is absolutely no ambiguity here.
The treaty will also require digital IDs to see if people are sick or even vaccinated, a sort of tracking system.
Tracking systems, all sorts of crazy. This doesn't sound good to me, this World Health Organization treaty that they're now calling an agreement and whatever and whatnot seems like a power grab of the American ability to decide for itself. And we've already seen what that looks like, right? We've seen what it looks like when the government steps in and says, no, we're not going to listen to doctors like Dr. J. Bhatacharya or the rest of the doctors that came out and said, no, you're doing the wrong thing here. But this is exactly what happens. So it's so important for us to be able to maintain control. It's bad enough before the WHO was involved during a pandemic. Imagine with them having more of a say. So I want to get into this because this WHO treaty is, in my opinion, very, very bad news. And it's up for a vote soon. I want to make sure I understand it. And who better than a real expert? He's been on the program before. Like I said, he is a professor of health policy at Stanford University and very outspoken on this. Dr. J. Bhatacharya, welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Rich. Nice to be back.
Amen to that, brother. So let's chat about this, because I remember about a year ago or so, this was out in the news everywhere. Everybody's freaking out. We're losing our health sovereignty. We need to put a pause on this. And it kind of, there was some pushback from a few folks in the Senate that said, look, you can't approve a treaty unless it goes through the Senate, yada, yada, yada. And I thought, a little tough talk, and it worked. But it seems like these talks have resumed, and here we are again. Give us an update on what's going on from your purview.
Sure. So in the last year, there's been this negotiation at the World, and it'll be sort of culminated in a couple of weeks at this World Health Assembly, where they will vote on the world nations that are part of the World Health Organization will vote on whether to revise something they call the International Health Regulations and whether to approve a new World Health Organization treaty. Rich, the treaty itself, if you listen to the rhetoric that's put up by the World Health Organization, they'll tell you swear up and down that there's no change in sovereignty. But I don't think that's right. I agree with you that, in fact, this treaty, the central ideas behind the treaty is to move a lot of the power over how pandemics are managed into the World Health Organization's orbit and away from national governments. And so, just to give you one example of this, they want to make sure that that vaccines and treatments and all this other a whole bunch of other things are part of a shared pool. Right. Now, in principle, there's nothing wrong with having, if there's some terrible disease that's going around in some remote parts of the world, and the United States is a country that often helps with those things. There's nothing wrong per se with that. But what you have is in power is a group of people that utterly failed during this pandemic to make good resource allocation decisions, to make decisions, to tell the public the truth about who was at risk during the pandemic, that stood by and countenanced lockdowns, embraced Chinese policy of lockdowns. Seems like they're seemingly controlled by pharmaceutical company interests more than by the people. And so, good sounding ideas in the hands of people that are not trustworthy, I think, just don't make sense to me. And so, in fact, what it will end up being is a transfer of sovereignty from the U.S. over how it manages its health policy to the World Health Organization, with an international body that, as best I can tell, the most important influences are the Chinese government and the Gates Foundation.
Right. And this seems to have been the case all along, right? Just in general, not just with this particular treaty, but in general, the World Health Organization has long been criticized as a puppet tool of the CCP. And that's my sordid view. I'm not a fan of the Chinese Communist Party. And I realize that when you're saying, and I think you're as objective as they come, you're a doctor, and you're talking about health policy. This is problematic to me. And I think when you talk about these shared resources, this is also problematic, right? Because they're literally saying we're going to force the United States, who has, 300 million people and whatnot, to share 20% of their pandemic-related health equipment, products, whatever it is, vaccines. And I'm not a proponent of vaccines. I don't want one. I didn't think I needed one. I'm a pretty young guy. But those who need them need them. And I can't imagine a scenario, or I don't want to imagine a scenario, where old people who need a vaccine or want a vaccine and say, look, sign me up. I want the vaccine. I'm 80 or I'm 70 and I don't want to die of this thing. Okay, super. Go ahead and do what you got to do. Oh, sorry, we don't have any. Why? We just sent some to Iran, or we just sent some to China. This, to me, is very counterproductive. Am I wrong in thinking that?
Well, I'll give you a good example of this that happened during this pandemic, right? So very early on, we had the Chinese saying that they were being hit with COVID, right, in January 2020. And the U.S. sent what stockpiles we had of protective equipment to China, including ventilators and stuff. And then when the disease then came to the U.S., then there was a shortage.
Right. Doc, hang on right there. The music means we got to take a quick pause. We're going to come right back. Folks, we're on with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He's a professor of health policy and director of the Center on the Demography and Economics of Health and Aging at Stanford University. I could barely say that. He's in charge of it. Look at that. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is coming back with me. We're going to continue talking about the World Health Organization, vaccines, and everything else that falls under his purview. Don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdez, live with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya.
So glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, welcome back, amigos. We continue our conversation on this World Health Organization Pandemic Preparedness Treaty. And again, this is a treaty that's a legally binding treaty that the globalist crazies at the UN want to put together to mastermind how we handle health policy so that they can handle the health policy for the United States in the event of what they declare is to be a pandemic that puts them kind of in the driver's seat where they're calling the shots, where they can track sick people, where they can also commandeer some of our supply of what's going on. To help people, whether it's, anything related to the pandemic that they have, instituted. And what's worse is even if these crazies decide next week to ink this deal, and even if it looks fair on paper to some people, maybe not me, but some, they can always change it later at something called the COP, the Conference of Parties, and they do that every year. And that's even more problematic because they meet behind closed doors. They discuss whatever they want, money, this, that, influence, and they go ahead and do what they want to do with your health. And obviously, that's not how America should roll. So that's why I brought in the big guns. We got Professor Jay Bhattacharya with us. He's been on the program before. You remember him. He stood up and said, leave the kids alone during COVID. A lot of people didn't listen. He ended up being right, very, very right. And he's the professor of health policy and the director of the Center on the Demography and Economics of Health and Aging at Stanford University. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, welcome back.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Now, before the break, the music kicked in, and you were making a point about the last pandemic. I want you to be able to finish that thought.
Sure. So, early on in the pandemic, the Chinese government reported that there'd been an outbreak in Wuhan, right? And what happened was that countries around the world, including the United States, sent protective equipment to China. But then when the disease hit our shores, there were shortages of them. So the kind of sharing that the World Health Organization does, the idea that somehow that they have this ability to plan and manage the demands for the entire global economy makes no sense in the context of how they did during this pandemic. There were lots of other mistakes that they made during the pandemic, including basic science mistakes. Like they denied that there was any immunity after COVID recovery, for instance.
Right.
I mean they changed the definition of vaccines. They recommended to the entire world that the Chinese lockdown policy of January 2020 had worked. And this is a group that really just didn't do well during the COVID pandemic. And their response to the mistakes they made, rather than a real introspection of at what went wrong, is to say, give us more power. I think it makes no sense to do that. There's another aspect of the pandemic creed that I find really troubling, and it hasn't got so much attention. One of the planks of it is to try to increase the amount of control that the World Health Organization has over public pronouncements about the pandemic. They want more censorship power. They want to work more closely with news media. Their view is that misinformation spread by the likes of you and me are what went wrong during the pandemic, and they would like to be able to work with member governments to increase the amount of control there is in the information over this kind of information, rather than allowing, for instance, the American First Amendment to hold.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And you see, this is why a lot of times over the years, and this is a little bit of an aside, but for the sake of the audience, oftentimes people would tell me, oh, they're trying to do this and they're trying to do that. And because I think like an American and I think with the founding documents in mind, the Declaration, the Constitution principally, I always say, but that doesn't work here, right? That might work in Europe. That would never work here because I'm thinking within the framework of what we have. However, I feel like that thinking is disappearing, and as it dissipates, it's being replaced by the thinking of people who think that we are Europe and that we can pull off what they pull off over there or in other parts of the world, which really just simply don't work here. These things may work in other governments that are parliamentary forms of government and in other places, but in our constitutional republic system of governance that we have, these things just simply don't work, right? How do you reconcile some global health organization being in charge of one's ability to talk about what they're going to do it doesn't work. And we've seen that. There's even there's a case against the government right now about this censorship that the White House and the DOJ and they were all involved in. So I agree with you. This is problematic. I'm just I'm almost alarmed that we're having this conversation again when they're literally in court for this now.
I mean, I think it's so obviously against the American First Amendment. The idea that there ought to be a public health exception to the First Amendment, a vaccine exception to the First Amendment, is a tremendously dangerous, slippery slope. If the government can take control of our ability to speak to one another in this vitally important context, well, what's to stop them from any other context? But Rich, I have to say one other thing. I don't actually think it's even in the interest of so many other countries either. There's a large group of African countries that have banded together, African interest groups that have banded together saying, look, this is essentially public health colonialism. You're going to force us to adopt all kinds of things that are not in the interest of our countries. You're going to have us adopt these things that are in interest of the richer countries of the world. And for instance, during COVID, a huge number of countries in Africa shifted resources away from diseases that actually kill Africans toward COVID prevention, a disease that had a very little impact in Africa because such a small fraction of the African population is over the age of 65. The World Health Organization essentially will take that kind of control over the health policy of those countries. And a lot of, this is part of the reason why the treaty failed last time. A lot of the African countries banded together and said no. We'll see what happens this time, but it's, I think, the same dynamic. It is essentially public health colonialism.
Well put. And I think that's hopefully those African countries will rub off on some other countries, and everybody will say, beat it, because this is obviously, in my opinion, this is a raw deal that just it doesn't look like it's going to work well for at least for the United States, and like you said, for some other countries. And the worst part of it is, even after they sign it, it seems like it can change, and there's a lot of movement that can happen. We've seen a lot of these pandemics over the years, Ebola, swine flu, all sorts, and they weren't all global pandemics like COVID. But I guess the outcome here is COVID was massive, as many called it. It's that every 100 years kind of pandemic. And I'm hoping it stays that way, that we don't have this again. But I feel when we put these rules in, like this WHO treaty, it's almost inviting the next pandemic. And there's all this talk about new COVID variants that are coming back, and they're going to be better than ever. There's talk about the bird flu. It's like everybody's selling the next pandemic that they're, I think, calling Pandemic X. And I understand to be prepared, but I also think it's just crazy. There's one thing that's preparation, and there's another thing to take advantage of people and people's rights. So your thoughts on if the World Health Organization is going too far, and if they are, what would you propose?
I do think the World Health Organization is going too far. It absolutely has not. Its performance during this pandemic gives me absolutely no confidence that they would do well in any pandemic. And they have undertaken none of the reforms. And what they want is they just want more power. One of the thing about pandemics, Rich, it's quite possible that this pandemic was caused by experimentation. I'm sure you've heard of the gain of function work.
Oh, sure. They created a more lethal version of the vaccine that we secretly funded through a backdoor, a gain of function grant to that other association. Fauci was in charge. He lied his butt off. Absolutely. Yeah.
So now the chief scientific officer of the World Health Organization is, in fact, he was previously head of an organization called the Wellcome Trust. It's a major research organization that funded gain-of-function work. The way that they think about preventing pandemics actually involves doing some of this very dangerous kind of research where they go into the bat caves of the world and bring out pathogens into city centers where they experiment on them. I think they just have a very, very odd view, a very dangerous view about what actually keeps the world safe and what doesn't keep the world safe. They want to prepare for pathogens that aren't circulating, with enormous contracts for vaccines that are barely tested, where we have excellent vaccines for diseases that actually hurt people, that they put aside. I just don't understand how, at this point, given how poorly the World Health Organization has performed, that they can come to the countries of the world with a straight face and say, well, we can keep you more healthy if you just give us more power.
Crazy. Folks, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is with us. We're going to hang out for another segment, and I want to talk a little bit more about these COVID variants and whatnot, because a lot of people are nervous about what might be to come. So, Doc, stick with us. Folks, we're coming right back. 833-482-5337 at around 10:50-ish Eastern Time. We'll be doing some calls. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The new set of variants, including KP.1 and KP.2, are nicknamed Flirt, and the CDC says both were detected in wastewater and are now the dominant variants in the U.S. But so many already have variant fatigue. Even though experts say there hasn't been evidence there is more severe illness with these variants, they are still spreading rapidly. Some of the most common symptoms with the Flirt variant include fever or chills, cough and sore throat, difficulty breathing, loss of taste or smell, and gastrointestinal symptoms. The CDC says just under 23% of adults received the latest 2023 to 24 COVID-19 vaccine, which was released in September of last year. Data also found vaccination percentages went up as age levels increased also. Those aged 75 and up had the highest percentage of vaccination coverage out of all age groups. Jeremy Baker, KENS 5.
All right, so we're back, and I want to get your reaction to this. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who is our guest, professor of health policy at Stanford University. And Doc, when you hear this report about the variants and the new symptoms, and it seems like a more mild version of the COVID that was killing everybody and their mother, and now is somewhat more manageable, is this still... are we finally in line? Like, I think we've heard treat it like the flu from the CDC, which made sense. I think Trump said that, and they said he was crazy. Now Biden says it. They think he's God. But now we have this version that of whatever it is now, and we hear that vaccines are going up in people older than 75, which, in my opinion, probably seems right. If that's the group that probably needs it the most. Are we on track? Are we in the right place, the wrong place? What say you?
I mean, I think this is the fact is that the COVID will be here with us for the rest of time. As long as there's humans and mammals, there will be COVID. So I think the idea that we need to name every variant of it is just, and spread fear about it is, I think, very counterproductive. And I was just looking at the latest stats. It's 0.3% of emergency room visits around the country are diagnosed with COVID-19 at this point. I mean, it's
wow.
Lower than it's been, since basically the start of the pandemic, or very, very low. And the reason why is because almost everybody has had COVID and recovered from it, which provides pretty good immunity against the next time you get it, even with new variant. It doesn't necessarily mean that you won't get it again, but it does mean that it's less likely that will have very severe disease if you do get it. It's no longer the fearful thing that once was. And Rich, I agree with you. There may be people that have chronic conditions, or that make them really, really severe chronic conditions vaccinations to make them vulnerable, or if they're much, much older. But my advice there is go talk to your doctor and see what's right for you, not panic about it and close schools and don't go to Thanksgiving or whatever. I mean, all of that was absolute nonsense and quite harmful. Now we have we have much better ways to manage it, and most importantly, we have widespread population immunity that reduce the harm from it. I don't think we should be talking about it in the news so much anymore.
Now, one last question I have for you, Doc, because you're so knowledgeable on this, is recently AstraZeneca pulled a vaccine that they used, not so much in the United States as I understand it, but in other places, because I guess in this lawsuit it was uncovered that what the crazy conspiracy theorists with the tinfoil hats were saying, that people were dying of blood clots, apparently was true. People were dying of blood clots. And I don't say that laughing for any lack of sensitivity. It's incredulity in my voice, because how could so many people say, oh my gosh, this is going on, and then finally now, oh yeah, it's going on. And I get it. The pharma companies are out to protect themselves, and oftentimes they get protection from the government. But what's your whole reaction to that whole thing?
So the reason given why it was pulled was that it was no longer commercially viable. It was actually that AstraZeneca vaccine was never approved for use in the U.S.
Right.
But it was a very similar one. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine, using a very similar mechanism, was approved, and it also had some blood clot problems. In fact, if you remember, in April 2021, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was paused because of blood clots. So the question then is, why is it commercially non-viable now? It's because of those side effects and because of widespread immunity. That's why, essentially, there's the root reason why it was pulled. Yes, it's no longer commercially viable, but the root reason is that there were side effects. And Rich, you're absolutely right. People who had those side effects, many of them, they were gaslit into thinking that there weren't any side effects of the vaccine when there were. That was a tremendous failure to keep, to be honest with the American public about the existence of vaccine harms. The very idea of vaccine harms was the subject of a tremendous censorship effort by the Biden administration, which should never have happened. Informed consent and basic medical ethics requires us to tell the public the truth about every medicine they take. Even if it leads you to do things that I don't necessarily want you to do, you deserve to know the truth.
Doc, we're out of time in this segment. I'd love to hold you for another minute or three if I could. Is that something you're able to do?
Absolutely.
All right. We'll come right back with Dr. J. Bhatacharya.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Do you remember back during COVID, there was that doctor that said, no, you can't keep the kids home from school. You need to let them go to school. You can't do that. It's going to be bad for them. It's going to be really bad, worse than if you let them go. They said, shut up, doc. You don't know what you're talking about. Doesn't matter if you're from Stanford, and we're kicking you off Twitter. That type of censorship went on, and it looks like we're trying to get it again, whether it's the WHO or anybody else. But we don't do that. On this program, I believe in the truth, I believe in free speech, and I believe in what our guests are discussing. And today, that's Dr. J. Bhatacharya. Doc, let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the amazing work that you're doing.
So, Rich, I'm so grateful that you didn't censor me during the pandemic. In fact, you had me on. The best way to follow my work now is actually on X, formerly Twitter. I'm Dr. J. Bhatacharya, letter J, and then BHATTACHARYA on Twitter. I also run a podcast called The Illusion of Consensus. So if you go on Substack, you can find me on Illusion of Consensus.
All right, folks, check him out on X. Check out the podcast. Give him a listen, and we'll definitely have him back if he's willing to stay up late with us. Doc, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Rich. Bye now.
Yep. Godspeed to you, sir. All right, folks, we're coming right back. Hour number 2. More conversation, more calls, and more everything. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of the program. And if you want to join us this Wednesday night, give us a call on our late night national town hall conversation, 833-482-5337-833-4-Valdez. And the dates are in. There's a CNN debate June 27th between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, who I like to call, respectively, El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, and Joe El Baboso Biden. And there's another debate that they've already scheduled for September as well. The Drudge Report is indicating that RFK Jr. could qualify to potentially join this. This would be terrific, I think. It'd be a 2-on-1. They try to double team Trump. I think he could handle both of them. I think it'd be really, really quite a sight. It would make for great ratings, great TV, lots of audio for me to play on the radio here. So I'm looking forward to that. And that's the news on that. There's other news out there. There's another ship, a barge. It hit another bridge. Galveston, Texas this time. We'll talk a little bit about that. A little bit more down the road, maybe in the next hour. And there's so much to talk about politically in our country. And it's always inspiring to me when somebody runs for office. I mentioned earlier this kid that's 19 years old ran for office in the town I live in. And I think he's won, or he's close to winning. He was up by 2 votes. And it goes to show you the importance of putting your name out there, the importance of getting in the ring, the importance of service overall. And somebody who understands service is Hung Cao. He served in the United States Navy, is a graduate of the Naval Academy, and he's the author of a new book called Call Me an American. He's also thrown his hat in the ring for Congress in the past and again now with the Senate. And I want to hear a little bit about his story. I want to get his take on some of the news of the day and learn a little bit more about him. Hung Cao, welcome to the program.
Rich, thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for staying up late and chatting with me and 5 million of my closest friends. We love to hear about everything that's going on in Virginia and everywhere else. And if you don't mind, take us through it. I know it's the first time we've spoken, and your story seems quite remarkable to me, and I know you've written this book. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your upbringing, because it's not the typical path to the Naval Academy.
No, it's not. So I was a refugee from Vietnam. So in 1975, the first vote in the U.S. Senate by Joe Biden was to stop all funding to South Vietnam and cause the entire country to fall apart. I mean, they had removed all the troops in 1973, and the South Vietnamese army was fighting back, and they're holding their own. But then Joe Biden, stopped all funding there, and basically they had no ammunition, no way to fight, and the country fell apart. My father was actually the deputy minister of agriculture, and so because of his position, he would have been either marked for death or sent to a re-education camp. So my parents had to make preparations in the middle of the night to get out of the country. And that night, my mom was sewing notes into our clothes saying, this is my child. Please take care of them in case we get separated, because those are the realities of war. And we got to the airport, and my parents were like, oh, my gosh, what if the Americans only took 2 of our 5 kids or 3 of our 5 kids? Who do we leave behind? Who can take care of themselves? How did we find them afterwards? But by the grace of God, we all made it to the United States, and this land of freedom welcomed us in with open arms. And my dad couldn't find work over here, but he always also was too proud to go on food stamps. So the only work he can find, with someone with a PhD in agriculture, was to go to Africa to develop third world countries under the umbrella of USAID. So we picked up and moved to West Africa, and I lived there for 7 years. I went to French schools, speaking French at school, and then speaking Vietnamese at home. And at the age of 12, my parents were like, oh my gosh, this kid kind of needs to learn English. So they made another hard decision. Is that my mom had to bring us all back to the United States, and my dad stayed over in these nasty countries like Zaire, Chad, Cameroon, but that's sacrifice. That's what we do for our children. That's what we do when we love our children. We endure the pain and hardship so that they can thrive. And so they gave me the American dream. I came back here. I learned English, tried to learn to speak without an accent so kids didn't pick on me and beat me up or whatever. And then I went to, I was accepted to this brand new school called Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology. It was modeled after Bronx Tech, and it's a great school. Half of the people that graduate from there in my class are addressed as doctor. That's how brilliant they are.
You wouldn't stand a chance there today.
No, I wouldn't. So you're right, because the left destroyed the entire meritocracy and the way that you get you enter, because they want diversity. So it went from 75% Asian to 55% Asian, and the school has dropped to a few years ago was number 5, and now it's number 14 as of 3 weeks ago, because of the left.
That has got to be the largest attack on Asians I've seen in my lifetime, right there in Thomas Jefferson. It's such a shame.
It is, and because the kids can't matriculate the curriculum properly because they're not prepared. So from there, I went to the United States Naval Academy. I graduated with a bachelor's in ocean engineering, and then I went to Naval Postgraduate School. I earned a master's in physics. I had fellowships at Harvard and MIT. But you know what, Rich? I paid back that American dream, every single dime and penny of it, with 25 years in the Navy as a special operations officer. I was a Navy deep sea diver. I recovered John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife, his sister-in-law, a few aircrafts that crashed into the ocean. I did a lot of things underwater also for our nation. And I also defused bombs for our SEAL teams and Special Forces teams in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Somalia. In there were some tours where I balanced the Navy's $140 billion budget. But, my last combat deployment was in January 2021. I came back, and it was stable over there. It wasn't like, obviously it's not like downtown in any area where Virginia or New York. I mean, it was stable enough. But, and Joe Biden came in, and 6 months later, we're watching as mothers are handing babies to Marines the way they did in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And so, I looked at my wife, I was like, I can't keep serving like this. I mean, we lost so many friends. I've buried so many people. And what for? So I retired. And I ran for U.S. Congress up here in Northern Virginia in a very blue district, the 10th Congressional District, which includes Loudoun County, right, where they're attacking, the school boards were attacking parents. They hired like hackers to go into their search engines to redirect them when they ask things about CRT and DEI. And I know it's insane. And now we didn't win, but I moved that needle so incredibly far. That's an area where Joe Biden won by 19 points, and I took it down to 6 points. And, it was devastating. But I was obedient because I'm a Christian. I was like, okay, Lord, this whatever you want. And in January 23, they asked me to come in and talk. Some of the senators. They said, hey, you overperformed in Northern Virginia more than Donald Trump did and more than Glenn Youngkin did, our governor. We need for you to run for U.S. Senate because based on our calculations, if you do this well, this Northern Virginia, and the South comes out, you've already won this race by 3 points. So here we are. We're running for U.S. Senate. It's not my dream. Like, it's never been my dream to be a politician. I mean, I left a career of honor to come here. But it's a calling, and it's something we have to do. And, look, I'm not going to do it for long. I'll do my time. But after that, someone will have to step in. But I will right this ship. I will get this country where it belongs because, I know what it's like, Rich, to wake up without a flag to stand under or a country to call my own. I'll be damned if that happens to your kids, my kids, or our grandchildren. So I'm going to fight every single day to keep this nation and this republic going. And that's why I'm running for U.S. Senate.
Outstanding. Hung Cao, Captain Hung Cao. Stick with us. I want to come back. I want to learn a little bit more about the book and a little bit more about the campaign. Outstanding thus far. I think it's a great message. It's a great vision, and God bless you for serving. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The president's comments, about his decision to pause a shipment to Israel sort of came in the light of campus protests. I mean, were those comments made in light of, kind of appeasing or reaching out to younger voters or how people were feeling in the country at that point?
I would say that we have been very loud and clear about our concerns about a major military operations in Rafah for weeks, for months. This is something that we have been talking about for some time now. So they're not connected. This is not about politics for this president. This is about the right thing to do.
That is Karine Jean-Pierre at the White House press briefing today, and she's giving her song and dance around the president pausing weapons to Israel, saying it's not about politics or appeasing young voters. However, we're having a discussion with Hung Cao, candidate for the Senate in Virginia and retired Navy officer. And what's interesting to me is we started that conversation with respect to what Biden did as a senator about arms and involvement in Vietnam. And it seems like he's got a track record of messing things up. Hung Cao, welcome back. Your reaction to Karine Jean-Pierre's statement?
Well, first of all, you're right. Joe Biden has been on the wrong side of every decision since he went in office in 1975, right? Vietnam. 2010, I was in Iraq when he went over as the vice president of the United States and was supposed to negotiate what's called the Status Forces Agreement and failed to do so. And I was watched in horror every night as our forces were being picked off by the Al-Qaeda on the way out to Kuwait. And then 2021, we know what happened there. But let's talk about Israel. Do you know what happened on October 7th, 2001? We invaded Afghanistan. Do you think anybody could have told us, could you guys need to take it easy on Taliban? Heck no. Imagine if they came in and besides killing all the people in the Twin Towers, but they also raped our young girls and women and threw babies in ovens. We would go scorched earth. I mean, Afghanistan would be flat at this point. But I have to commend the Israelis. They have a lot of restraint. It's Hamas that's been using Palestinians as human shields. They've been doing it for years. That's why they have their headquarters underneath hospitals and schools. These guys are animals. And to withhold weapons from a country that's trying to hold basically to protect themselves is wrong. But Israel also brings a lot to the world. I mean, they're the size of New Jersey. They have the population the size of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So they're 0.1% of the world's population, but they pack 200 times their punch when it comes to innovation, industry, medical, and everything else. So they bring a lot to the world, but these terrorists don't.
I think I'm with you 100%. I agree with you. And I'm always amazed that either I just see the world so differently or I'm just less susceptible to some of the propaganda that's out there. But it's amazing to think that, and you're somebody who's served in Afghanistan and you've seen war from multiple fronts as a kid and again as a sailor. And what I find interesting is, have you ever seen a time where we kind of call it and go, all right, you've now killed 30,000 of their guys and they killed 1,700 of your guys. So, all right, we're good now. We don't have war anymore. Have you ever seen that type of rationale?
No, it's just these people that don't know what they're doing. You know what happened in Afghanistan? These young men in skinny jeans and man buns from the State Department came over and told us that the Taliban would really like to have Bagram Air Base. We're like, no, this is our Alamo. Like, if anything was supposed to happen, we were going to leave 2,500 special forces behind. But if anything was going to happen, we were going to all fold back into Bagram, and then 75th Rangers was going to circle around Bagram to protect us while we all got out, and then 75th Rangers would then fold in and fly out. So Bagram was never supposed to be given to the Taliban. But this is the Biden administration thinking they're smarter than everybody else, and they've proven otherwise every single step of the way.
Unbelievable. Now, Hung Cao, I know there's a primary going on, and you have a primary election. We've had others that are also vying for the U.S. Senate in Virginia. Talk to the listeners, explain to them why you're the guy and what you're bringing to the table, something that you haven't yet said, and you've said a lot.
Well, I've said that I've moved the needle 13%, which is significant. No one's done that in this area. But let's contrast me with Tim Kaine. You put me up there with him. The contrast is very evident, right? You look at me and him, and we both received a government paycheck for 30 years, except he's got millions of dollars to show for it. That guy's got scars. So you tell me who fought and served this country. Who fought for this country? You know, it's not him. And the thing is that no one else has this infrastructure to go forward and beat him, and that's why he's been attacking me relentlessly. He's hired people to write nasty stories that are obviously untrue because I have a top secret clearance. You know, I've had one for 3 decades. Do you think I'm going to do something illegal, immoral, or unethical? I don't think so. I mean, you can go to my website, hungforva, that's HUNGFORVA.com, and learn all about me. And just for all your listeners, you may not be able to vote for me, but I can vote for you. My vote will keep the Democrats from packing the courts. They'll keep people from doing illegal things and allow us to hold unelected officials accountable.
Hung Cao, again, remind everybody of the website. If they want to put their hand deep in their pocket and send you some money, how do they do it?
It's HUNGFORVA.com, so hungforva.com. And like I said, I'll fight your battles every single day. I've done it for 25 years, but I need the ammunition. And, you know, Tim Kaine, don't forget, he's the bag man for Hillary. He's got the PhD from he was her running mate. He's got the PhD from the Hillary School of Crookedness, you know? So I'm telling you right now, we got to fight this guy and take him down. And he's very beatable. We've had polls out there, and he's at 35% favorability rating.
Now, Hung Cao, we've got Biden saying that Trump's beat him in a debate in 30 seconds. How do you think this plays out come the November election for Trump and Biden?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how. I mean, they're going to have to medicate the heck out of him to get him to keep with Trump. So I don't know how they're going to do it, but you know, I don't know. It's just going to be funny. It'll be a
definitely worth watching, right? That's what I think. Hung Cao, you're our gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I want to thank you for being with us. Thanks for staying up late. Good luck.
Thank you, Rich.
You bet. All right, folks, we come back. We continue our conversation about politics and more, and the news of the day, plus your calls. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our conversation. And I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with somebody I like to call Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th president of these United States. As you know, Trump's been in court, and his numbers only seem to go up and up and up. And it's quite the phenomena, I believe, but it makes sense, right? There's a lot of people that look at what actually goes on with Trump, and they get mad at it. One of those is former Republican congressman and now MSNBC host Joe Scarborough. He's got a show called The Morning Joke, and he's very upset with the New York Times poll that shows that Biden is losing to Trump. In fact, he calls it garbage. Listen to this.
And then finally, about 2 weeks later, after the residue of the New York Times Siena poll leaves, people go, oh, I think Joe Biden's on a winning streak. And then 2 weeks later, it comes out again, and it's garbage. It's an outlier. And yes, the New York Times, when they have all of these experts questioning the methodology, when they're calling like 20% of the people likely voters who have never voted before or didn't vote in the last two primaries, when they're even quoting people who said they're switching their vote from Joe Biden, who have never voted before? I'm sorry. The New York Times has to know what they're doing.
There's Joe Scarborough, and pardon the term, but it sounds like he's got his panties in a bunch. Now, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about Trump's election, the electoral strategy, with someone who specializes in this. He's a political advisor and campaign strategist, Dr. Louis Perron, and he's got a book called Beat the Incumbent, Proven Strategies and Tactics to Win Elections. Dr. Perron, welcome.
Hey, good to have you. Thank you.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about this strategy. I know that not necessarily a strategy, but maybe you can give us your take on it, how Donald Trump's legal problems have turned out to be a real opportunity for him to communicate with the people.
Yes, absolutely. I think a crisis is almost always also an opportunity, because if you're seen as a threat in the surveys, if you're a candidate, you're running for office, all of a sudden you're seen as winning, obviously you'll become a target, right? So you're being accused of things, there are scandals in the media, there may be legal issues, but the thing is, the key in such a situation is to use the media attention you have because of the crisis to circle back to your main campaign message. So in the case of Trump, it should be something like, instead of talking about an affair from 10 years ago, we should be talking about how much you pay for groceries since I left office. So that's how I would spin it, and I think that's how he does spin it.
Right. Now, does it come as any surprise to you that people are sympathetic to him coming across as a martyr? Because honestly, it was surprising to me. I didn't think that there would be Democrats that would kind of cross the aisle and say, you know what, this is unfair. I can't believe they're doing this to this guy. Because I thought all Democrats didn't like him, but it turns out there are some that see this as unfair, and it's actually winning them over. Does that come as a surprise to you?
Yes and no. I think that he is sort of benefiting from the fact that he's accused of so many things. And I think if you're accused of one thing, you're sort of forced to go into the details and answer. But if you're accused of many things, it makes it easier to sort of bundle them together and dismiss it as politically motivated. I wrote a book, Beat the Incumbent, where I write about cases from all over the world. And one of the person I write about exactly about this is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was a comedian and ran for president in Ukraine. And when he started to be a target and was accused of things by his opponents, he made a competition out of it. He asked his followers on social media to send in the most ridiculous allegations against him and made a draw. He made a competition out of it and thereby was able to avoid answering the questions of the allegations and dealt with them all together. Brilliant strategic move. Yeah.
You know, I think that's an interesting point. I remember some of that. It was very, very funny stuff that he put together because he's a pretty funny guy. And now the United States spends a lot of time sending a lot of money to Ukraine. But you're right. It was a very good strategy. Now, when it comes to, I guess, overall, whether it's Zelensky or Trump or anybody else, I don't think everybody handles it that way, right? It's not always, I think not everybody makes lemons out of lemonade, if you will. I think sometimes people fall victim to this and they take the attack and it gets to them. So would you say it's making light of the situation or minimizing the situation, or what's the actual strategy that's helped these, each of them?
Well, first rule in crisis communication is always get the facts straight, right? You need to know the facts, because natural human reaction is always to deny things. But sometimes it's the denying and the lying that gets you into more trouble. So It's like a labyrinth. You need to know at the very beginning, am I turning left or am I turning right? And I think one thing, though, that I think any politician, whether you love him or you hate him, can learn from Donald Trump is if you don't stand up for yourself, you lose your best advocate. I mean, he does stand up for himself and defend himself, and I think that's a takeaway for any politician around the world.
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair point. Now, again, the book is Beat the Incumbent, Proven Strategies and Tactics to Win Elections. What is another one of the strategies and tactics you talk about in the book when you're trying to beat the incumbent?
Well, if you're running as a challenger, and I write about challenges from around the world and any level of government, like local, national elections, I mean, the first rule is it's a referendum on the incumbent. So a savvy challenger makes sure it stays that way. And I think that's where I see a little bit of trouble for Trump, because I think it's in his very nature to make everything about himself. And I think an election with incumbent is a referendum on the incumbent. Joe Biden obviously is a very vulnerable incumbent, so you have to prosecute the incumbent. You have to make the case why the incumbent needs to be replaced.
Now, what about, how do you reach, and this is just, I guess, my own thinking, criticism I hear on the radio quite often, of when people say, don't tell me why the other guy is no good, tell me why you think you're better. How do you address those concerns, or are they minuscule from your view?
No, I think they go hand in hand. I think the key in an election campaign is to show contrast. So ideally, you run on an issue where your side is strong and unified and the other side is divided. Ideally, you run on something that mirrors a negative from the opponent. So yes, you also have to talk about what you would do better. But I think that's only the second step as a challenger. If the incumbent is not vulnerable, it's very hard to go against an incumbent. Actually, as a political consultant, I think with one exception in my early days, I've actually never lost an incumbent race.
Interesting. Folks, we're on with Dr. Luis Perron. He is a political advisor and campaign strategist, author of the book, Beat the Incumbent, Proven Strategies and Tactics to Win Elections. He's from Switzerland, joining us tonight live from the Philippines. We're coming right back with him. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I think it's a little demeaning to show up in front of a courthouse, and particularly one where we're talking about an allegation of paying a porn star. It's really very difficult to watch.
Why is it difficult to watch?
Well, there's a level of dignity and decorum that you expect of people who are running for the highest station in the land, and going out and prostrating themselves in front of the public to try and apparently curry favor with the person who's our nominee is a little embarrassing.
That is Senator Mitt Romney. I like to call him Mittens. And Mitt Romney was on Capitol Hill today saying it's embarrassing for Republicans to go to New York City and stand outside the courthouse and support their candidate, Donald Trump. Our guest is Dr. Louis Perron. He is a political advisor, campaign strategist, and author of the book, Beat the Incumbent, Proven Strategies and Tactics to Win Elections. Dr. Perron, do you agree with Senator Romney that it's embarrassing for Republicans to show support for their standard bearer while he's in court?
Well, I look at this always from a strategic point of view, right? I don't want to make a political judgment here. And I see what Mitt Romney is saying, and I guess there is part of the conservative base, the religious base, who sees it the same way or who is open to seeing it the same way. That said, purely tactically speaking, of course, for Trump, it's great to have support. And when I heard the news, I was actually surprised. Why did it take them so long? And I think it also shows that the Republican Party really has changed dramatically. I mean, who is Mitt Romney? He's actually the nominee from 10 years ago. So, right. And now he's really a minority in the party. And I think it shows that Donald Trump has a very firm hold on the party, for better or for worse, and how much the party has changed.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. Now, from your perspective as crisis communications, because daily we get clips from Trump outside the courthouse, and I think it is brilliant, his strategy of the fact that he's literally handcuffed and he can't be anywhere else in the country, campaigning in Ohio or anywhere else. He's got to be stuck in New York City. And he makes the best of it with these outside the court appearances every day, with these mini press conferences that get so many eyeballs and so many ears listening. And basically, it's like all eyes on Trump. And I think what they meant for bad, with whether it's election interference, trying to suppress his campaign with all of this lawfare, it seems to be backfiring and giving him even more of an opportunity. So I think I look at it that way, and then I think the Speaker of the House and others in Congress, other prominent Republicans, are now also capitalizing on the fact that all the cameras are here in New York, then let's go to New York and take advantage of the cameras. Do you agree with that notion, or is it just working out that way?
Largely agree, because I think campaigns are mostly, nationwide campaigns are really run and won in the media. Actually, this whole idea that it takes time away from rallies and campaign trail, I always believe that rallies are expensive, they're time-consuming, they're tiring, and actually there's little scientific proof that show that they would really have much an effect. I would even think that actually part of the reason why Trump did them and why they were an important part of his campaign strategy is because it feeds his ego, because he enjoys doing them, and so do many other politicians. And I've worked for a presidential candidate who in his last rally had close to 1 million people applauding him. So yes, obviously this is thrilling, right? Whether it has much an effect, I somehow doubt it. I think, except if you're running a local campaign, it's different, but nationwide campaigns, it's the message and the media.
Message and the media. Now, let everybody know, Dr. Perron, how they can get a copy of your book if they want to learn more about it. Where do they go?
It's available on Amazon.com. You can order it directly from me on my website, louisperron.com. You can also subscribe to my blog and get regular takeaways on winning elections, because that's really my passion ever since I'm a teenager. I'm just fascinated with what it takes to win elections.
Outstanding. Well, I want to thank you for being with us this evening and giving us some international insight on the American election. It's always interesting to hear, how the rest of the world is viewing our politics. So thank you, Doc.
Thank you for having me, and I wish you a wonderful evening.
Likewise. Thank you. Godspeed and good travels. Folks, we come back with your calls and more. And then at the top of the next hour, it's Open Phone America. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So in Congress today, they had another episode, an actual hearing, of the weaponization of government against all things Trump. And this lawfare that we're seeing in our justice system today is honestly, it's something we shouldn't be seeing, but we're seeing it. And Robert Costello used to be Michael Cohen's lawyer. He was also a lawyer for Rudy Giuliani. And Bob Costello was at a hearing today examining the weaponization and the lawfare in our justice system. And he was clarifying a lot of things that many of us may not have known about Michael Cohen, the star witness in the government's case against Trump, with respect to the Stormy Daniels payment and all of that. Listen to this.
Obviously, when we started to talk about the NDAs, and this is the very first meeting at the Regency Hotel, when, by the way, Rudy Giuliani was not involved in representing Donald Trump at that time. Cohen testified that it was a conspiracy between Giuliani and Costello as of this date. Totally false. In any event, he also said that he didn't discuss the Stormy Daniels matter with us, and he certainly did. I specifically asked him, because he kept on going back saying, I can't believe they're trying to put me in jail for these NDAs. So I said, Michael, tell me about the NDA. Tell me about Stormy Daniels. What did you do? He said, I got a call from a lawyer representing Stormy Daniels who represented that she was going to testify that Donald Trump had sex with Stormy Daniels. Michael Cohen said, I didn't believe the allegation, but I knew that such an allegation would be terribly embarrassing. He said it would be embarrassing. He focused on Melania Trump. He said, I didn't want to embarrass Melania Trump. He said, that's why I decided to take care of this on my own.
On his own, he decided to take care of it. Now, this is something people didn't realize. We may have heard, but maybe they didn't believe Trump when he said that this was all Cohen's idea. And now you hear Cohen's lawyer telling you that it was all Cohen's idea. And he also went on to tell Congressman Matt Gaetz, who was asking him the questions, that this whole thing is yet another branch of government that Cohen hasn't lied to. There's more audio that I can play for you when we come back from that testimony. Very interesting stuff. But interesting for me that the government would make their two star witnesses in this case, Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, both who've kind of notoriously pooped the bed on the stand, if you will, and doesn't look like they're really making the case for District Attorney Bragg, right? So anyway, folks, we're going to continue our conversation on all things news, current events, and of course, whatever topics you want to bring to the table in Open Phones Across America. And that's coming up right now at the top of the hour. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. I'm live here in New York with you until 1 a.m. Eastern time. If you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, you could chime in online at Rich Valdez on whichever social media you can find me on, or give us a call, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And of course, the big story today was Joe Biden. Joe Biden, I played this before, I'll play it again. Joe Biden says that he is ready to debate Donald Trump, and it's Trump that's dodging him. How about that? Listen to this.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. Since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
That is Joe Baboso Biden. He did a video message that wasn't impromptu as he was shuffling over to Marine One or falling up the stairs of Air Force One. No, this was rehearsed, and that's fine. It's a campaign, and you got to put your best foot forward. So do all the rehearsed videos you want, sir. I still don't think you take Trump in a live debate, but of course he doesn't want a live audience, and he's trying to rewrite the rules. Joe Biden says he's willing to debate former President Trump ahead of their rematch, but he's rejected proposals from the traditional debate commission, and he says, no, the Commission on Presidential Debates, I don't want your rules. I want these rules. Now, again, they have organized debates for presidential candidates since 1988, right? That was Bush versus Dukakis. But that's not the case anymore because the Biden campaign says no. They sent a letter to the Commission on Presidential Debates, and they said the president is refusing to go along with the proposed rules, arguing they are out of step with changes in the structure of our elections. Of course, they've changed the way we do our elections, so of course they want to change the way we do debates now. And it's not in the interest of voters. So the Biden campaign makes several points of why they want a different structure in the debate with Trump. Number one, they said they wanted to be on timing. The commission had announced that they had proposed 3 of debates, one on September 16th, one on October 1st, one on October 19th, and a vice presidential debate on September 25th. And the Biden campaign argues the debates were too late in the cycle and would be held after early voting had begun in several states, meaning millions of voters may have already cast their ballots. So they said the commission's failure yet again to reschedule debates will be that this is not meaningful for all voters, not just those who cast their ballots on Election Day, yada, yada, yada. So they were very upset. I'm not going to read the whole quote because it was kind of senseless. The Biden campaign also suggested 2 presidential debates in June and September, along with instead of 3, they want 2, with a vice presidential debate in July. You know, when everybody's on vacation and nobody's watching TV, which they're probably going to get because that's the only way they're going to agree to this is when there's a lower audience out there because they're afraid of what Kamala will say to whomever El Trompito picks. And then they have announced that CNN and the candidates have agreed to a June 27th debate that I can't wait to see. So, and another one on September 10th. Now, the other arguments that the Biden campaign made are that they want this to be substance over spectacle. So they now take issue with the commission holding debates with an audience, saying that the commission's model of building huge spectacles with large audiences at great expense simply isn't necessary or conducive to good debates. They don't want people seeing Joe El Baboso Biden. No audience. Isn't that something? They said the debates should be held in a television studio similar to the first series of televised presidential debates between JFK and Richard Nixon in 1960. How about that? The best way to do a debate is to take it back to the way we did it a million years ago. Then they said you must enforce the debate rules. The Biden campaign expressed their frustration with the commission's enforcement or lack thereof of enforcement of the rules for each candidate. They accused the commission of being unable or unwilling to enforce the rules in the 2020 debates, meaning I went to the debate with Trump. I didn't like how he treated me. You didn't shut him up, so I don't want to play anymore. They said it was far from consistent with the orderly and informative process voters deserved in 2020. The first presidential debate in 2020 was criticized for the lack of control of the candidates by the moderator, Chris Wallace. The second and final debate between the two in 2020 featured the ability for microphones to be muted. I remember when that happened. They liked that, I'm sure. They love anything with censorship. And instead of debates organized by the commission, the Biden campaign offered that they be hosted by a broadcast organization that hosted the Republican primary debates in 2016 that Trump was in, and a 2020 Democrat primary debate that Biden participated in. The television networks that meet both requirements include CNN, ABC, and CBS, plus the Spanish language network Telemundo. So that was that. Then the Biden campaign talked about boxing out RFK Jr. In their memo, the Biden campaign outlined their desire to include the only leading candidates, Biden and Trump, in the debates, and seemingly not wanting to include RFK Jr. on the debate stage. It says the debates should be one-on-one, allowing voters to compare the only two candidates with any statistical chance of prevailing in the Electoral College. And the problem here is that they're shutting out Kennedy because Kennedy clearly harms Biden more than he harms Trump. He was the one that ran as a Democrat and is now running as an independent. I think he has a right to be there. Anyway, CNN and ABC News, I mean, that would be the best spectacle of all, right? CNN and ABC announced their requirements for the debates that could allow for Kennedy to make the debate stage, but it appears unlikely. To qualify for either debate, any candidate must be set to appear on ballots in enough states to get 270 electoral votes and must get 15% in 4 national polls that meet each news organization's standards. So he's got to be able to poll at 15%, and more importantly, he's got to be on the ballot in enough states to get to 270. That's the hard part of him getting to the ballot with Biden and Trump, each of them respectively being on the ballot. So hopefully he can pull it off. I would love to see RFK Jr. on the debate stage with these two. Then you've got the overall pushback from the Biden folks. Now, despite the response from Trump saying, yes, I'm in, no matter what, wherever you want, I'm doing it. The folks at the Biden campaign still had a lot, right? They're talking about all sorts of things. If they're just going back at it. I'm not going to get into that right now. So I want to get your thoughts, right? Because I could stay in this article forever, and I don't want to. What do you think? Do you think Trump is dodging Biden? Is it Biden that's dodging Trump? I want to know what your thoughts on the debate and everything else that we're talking about. Don't go anywhere. Coming right back with your calls.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez here with you straight till 1 a.m. in the morning and Eastern Time, New York time. And I want to get to some of your calls. There's plenty to discuss, plenty of folks on the line as well. We've got calls from Montana, North Carolina, Idaho, Ohio, South Carolina, Georgia. Where's New York at? Where is Oregon? Where is California? Where is Florida? What's going on here? But the middle of the country definitely locked down over here. And I want to, let's go to whoever's been on hold the longest. Let's go to, let's see, who was it here? Where did it go? I just had my finger on it. Hang with me. Don't go anywhere. Let's go to Scott, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Go right ahead.
Well, first of all, thanks for the great, easy phone number, Rich. But I wanted, regarding the debate, I wanted to say it's non-traditional to not have an audience. It's un-American. And personally, I consider not having an audience the greatest threat to democracy since Pearl Harbor and 9/11.
Well,
it's just so undemocratic.
Well, thankfully,
And
nobody's
I'm
being
surprised-
killed, right? Unexpectedly, thank God. I wouldn't want to cheapen any of their sacrifices and those deaths that way. But I agree that this is contrary to the tradition that we've had for several decades. And we should. I think the American people have a right to be there. It's, you know, it's not like we're in the middle of the COVID pandemic where, oh, you can't be here, you can't be there, right? Those were the excuses then. We now know you can go places. We don't have to shut down the churches. We don't have to shut down anything. And we don't have to shut down the audience at the debate. They do this because they know it hurts Trump. And I don't think it necessarily hurts him, but he would do better with a crowd, right? And even the political scientist who joined us earlier from Switzerland, who is opining on American politics, even he said he feels that many politicians have large rallies. It feeds their ego. But feeding the ego is very important for somebody who's got to perform because that's good for them. Right now, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think Trump is just great at putting on a good show, and he does it well. He delivers. So I think they're trying to kind of clip his wings in a sense. And it's not a good look. But I agree with you, Scott. Thank you for the call. Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Let us continue. Let's go to Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Go to Paul. Paul, what's up, my man? How are you?
Hey, good evening, Rich. I'm just fine. Hey, to get to the crux of it, I don't know if I'm either stupid or confused, or I'm both. Because I don't understand why Biden would say, I don't want an incumbent president would say, I don't want no audience in there. I only want a very left-sided seat in there, and Trump's under all these allegations and so forth. I think that they would try to do some kind of entrapment. And I brought this up the other night. He's under a gag order, and Biden said, okay, we're going to talk about the economy and everything. But what would stop Biden from saying something to Trump that he couldn't answer? So I'm very against that. What's the meaning of a debate? It's to hear both sides of the story. And, we as the American people deserve that. Are we going to get to watch this on TV? Or that's my question. I mean, is it going to be televised for me to watch?
Oh, yeah. And that's the key. The Biden people want it on TV, but they don't want anybody live in the audience in the studio. They just want two podiums, two candidates, a couple of cameramen, a couple of debate moderators, and that's it. I think the fanfare is good. I like it when there's people in the audience. I like it. They always say, and please hold your applause. But you know what? You get a genuine reaction from the people that are there that gauge the situation when they can, clap for one side versus another. And they've always controlled that by giving out, I don't know if it's 100 tickets, 50 tickets to Biden, 50 tickets to Trump, so that, the representation of support is equal amongst them. But you can still kind of gauge who has a better applause line, who's got a better laugh line. A live studio audience is great, right? I think that's fantastic. I wish I had one, right? I would love it if I had a live studio audience. Can't have one, but I would love it. And because, again, you get to read the audience. For me, as a broadcaster, I get to, the only people I can see occasionally, right, are the folks in the control room, the production staff. But otherwise, I have to guess what Paul in Zanesville looks like. Just imagine if I were saying things and I could see you nodding your head or giving me a thumbs up or giving me the middle finger, right? You get a sense of what people are feeling when you could see them. And I think that's also important because it helps you with your own delivery of the material. So, yeah, I think the stipulations are definitely going to be unfair to Trump, but I don't think they hurt Trump. I think Trump is very versatile. He's built to win, and insignificant things like this are insignificant. It's exactly that. Right. Ultimately, Biden says, "Oh, you're dodging me, you're this and that." I think Trump shows up with bells on and says, "Come on, you name the place, you name the time, I'm there," and I can't wait. And hopefully they let RFK Jr. in. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see them try to double team him. You know, one go high, one go low, one hit the left, one hit the right. I would love it. I think Trump could handle both of them at the same time, and it would be a real exciting to see. Paul in Zanesville, Ohio. Thank you, my friend. WHIZ. Big shout out to you guys. And let us continue. Where do I want to go here? We got a little bit of Michael Cohen. Let's go to Frank, Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Frank, your thoughts on the debate?
Well, I believe that, to be fair, do away with the podiums so there's not a bunch of obstructions. So we could have more of a view of what's hidden behind those podiums. No extra wires. Maybe put them in wrestling uniforms or something like that, like, handle it just like WWE, like Vince McMahon would do. And
love that.
And if they want to get tough, and with the sound bites like "Make My Day," and act like Clint Eastwood or whatever, well, start get pushy, and then go for the bait. That's what he said. Well, that would mean that as keywords for let's go tag team RFK Jr. because he has his bait, which is half his worm tied behind his back. So, it's all going to be staged, and it's all smoke and mirrors. Anyway, they're all trying to hide. Anyway.
Well, I agree with you that they would sell a ton of tickets if they did it WWE style and they hired Vince McMahon to put the debate together. It'd be great. Maybe you could throw a little steel cage match into it. I would love I love that stuff. I'm a huge fan. But I think that would be enjoyable. I doubt any of that's going to happen. And I think ultimately Biden gets his clock cleaned by Trump. He lands one, maybe two good hits that get echoed and parroted through MSNBC and CNN as if he is the victor. But ultimately, I just don't think Biden has a leg to stand on. He's going to try and attack Trump for being a threat to democracy, for being a white supremacist, for being, everything they claim that he is. And, finding him guilty without a court even finding him guilty. But ultimately, I think people look at that and they go, you know what, that's more of the same. Biden hasn't done a ton for me, and I'm sticking with Trump. And I think that's what really pushes people over the top when it comes to Trump. So, Frank in Evergreen, Montana, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Now, folks, we're going to get to the rest of your calls momentarily. I got our buddy Gil from Manila, Philippines, coming your way. Definitely want to chat with you. We've got calls from Newport, North Carolina, Idaho, Boise, Idaho, Atlanta, Georgia, and more coming in. Again, that number 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. If it's busy, give us a call right back. A line will open up momentarily. 833-4-Valdez. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez. We're coming right back.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
Are tacos sandwiches? An Allen County judge says yes, and that seems to clear the way for famous taco
to open another location. For months, restaurant owner Martin Quintana has battled with the Allen County Plan Commission over what exactly was being built on West Jefferson Boulevard. The nearby neighborhood is okay with a small made-to-order Subway-style sandwich shop, but not okay with a fast food joint. Judge Craig Bobay agrees tacos and burritos are Mexican-style sandwiches, especially when prepared at a counter. Both the next step and a possible opening date are still unknown.
That's an actual news story that went down in the New York Post. The decision was made between burritos and tacos being considered sandwiches. And this was according to a judge making this decree. And what's interesting, it's not the only taco news out there. And I'll get into the taco story a little more, but this is also a taco story, just a very different one. There is a Mexican taco stand that's becoming the first in the world to receive a coveted Michelin star. I think that's fantastic. Tacos El Califa de Leon, a taco stand in Mexico City, won a Michelin star. So cool, right? Their famous tortillas cost $5. And that's amazing. Compliments to the chef. That's a real story also. So think of that when you go to one of these Michelin-rated restaurants. Outstanding, right? Now you have an actual taco stand. And it's been decreed by a judge that it is a Mexican-styled sandwich. Now, I didn't bring that up to really talk about tacos, although I did want to a little bit. It is May, and May is Cinco de Mayo. And while I'm not Mexican, I love me some tacos, and I love me some Cinco de Mayo because that's my birthday. But we haven't talked about the border in a while, and I want to get into that. I also want to circle back on our political conversation regarding the debates and everything else that's going on. So I want to hit the phones, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. I want to go to Gil in Manila, Philippines, because, Gil, I want to know a few things. One, do you agree with the judge when he says that a taco is a Mexican-style sandwich?
No.
What is it? If it's not a sandwich, it's a what?
Oh, it's something that's strictly Mexican. A sandwich has bread on it.
Right.
Something between two pieces of bread.
Yeah, it's a taco.
Huh?
Right. I'm with you. It's a taco. It's not a sandwich. Although I could see it. I guess it's like saying like a gyro, the famous gyro is a Greek-styled sandwich, and I don't think that is either. But you never know. Anyway, I want to move on from that. What do you think about the debate? Do you think the debate rules that Biden is putting forward are fair? Do you think they should play ball with him? I guess they have to, because he'll say he'll take his ball and go home if he doesn't.
Well, if he picks up his marbles and goes home, it will do him a lot more harm than it will do Donald Trump. And Mr. Kennedy can have a debate, and they can both pile it onto Mr. Biden. But we know, like I've said, Joe Biden is proof positive that hair plugs cause brain damage. We both know that. So
that's funny.
Now that's a good line. That's a good joke, and give that to your friend, Mr. with my compliment.
Absolutely.
But that's not why I called. I'm up in arms about radio station WABC. You're very familiar with that?
Yes.
I go back to the days of Cousin Brucey when I was a teenager in Connecticut.
Wow.
I listened between Cousin at night with Cousin Brucey on WABC and Murray the K on WINS on WINS 1010 New York.
How cool is that? Now, just so you know, I also go back a little bit with Cousin Brucey, not as much as you, but when I was a local radio host in New York City on WABC some years ago, and Cousin Brucey came on right after me, and I was his lead-in. I think I was on from 5 to 6, and he started at 6. And I remember his first day back, he had left Sirius XM Satellite and started his show back at WABC, which he originally started out on WABC, some 40 or 45 years earlier. And It was so cool to meet, the legendary. I'd met him before, but to work with him, to have him as a colleague, it was so cool. And it was so cool to be the guy right before him on his, legendary show. So that I love sharing that story because I don't have too many opportunities to tell that story. Anyway, Gil, go right ahead.
Well, I'm up in arms about what WABC just did to Rudy Giuliani, canceling his show, saying, giving the reason that he was continue to say that the last presidential election had been stolen. Now, I think there is such a thing as freedom of speech in this country, and after everything that Rudy Giuliani has done for New York, made it a safe place to live. I remember New York before he was mayor, and I wouldn't take my family there because it wasn't safe.
Listen, Gil, I agree with you. Rudy Giuliani is a patriot. Rudy Giuliani is someone that has taken on the mob, the mafia in New York. He's taken on the cartels, something called the FARC, a Mexican drug syndicate, some rebels out in Colombia. The things that he helped keep New York City together during 9/11 when he wasn't even mayor anymore. He was on his way out. And he's been an absolute patriot. He fought for President Trump in the 2020 election, in my opinion, vociferously defending his client. And I don't think he's done anything wrong, right? But I'm biased, and that's okay. I think that people, i.e. lawyers, get into things and they find liability, they find fault, they get involved in things. And radio stations make choices. Sometimes I get Facebook messages or other messages on social media where people tell me, oh, I don't hear you on the radio anymore in X, Y, and Z town or at X, Y, and Z time. And I don't have any control over what a local radio station in California or any other part of the country decides to do, whether it's, stop carrying the show for all 3 hours, only carrying 2 hours, carrying 1 hour, not carrying the show at all, changing the station format for all I know, right? Things happen, and we don't have control over those things. And I would hate to think that it's because they're trying to limit my speech. Oftentimes, I think it's either a financial thing or it's just something that's easier for their programming decisions. In the case of Giuliani, I don't have all the details. I did look at the New York Post account of it, where they interviewed both the owner of WABC, who I know and who I've had on this program, John Katz. I consider him someone I respect and have had a good relationship with. And, of course, Rudy Giuliani, someone who I respect and have a good relationship with and think is a national hero. And I have to say, it just seems to me like a real difference of opinion because lawyers got involved. And lawyers advise and say that, this and that. And if it wasn't for the fact that the Dominion company was suing Fox News and other companies for billions of dollars, I think some people wouldn't be as nervous and feel like there's liability with some of the statements that Rudy makes. Now, I don't. I agree with you in the sense if Rudy comes on this program and he wants to say they stole the election, they did. He's going to say whatever he wants to say. This is a former Deputy Attorney General of the United States during the Reagan administration, a former United States attorney in the Southern District of New York, former mayor of the city of New York, former attorney to the President of the United States, America's Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He could say whatever he wants. I will fact check him if I think he's telling a lie, but he has a right to tell his story. That's his version of the events. I think he shares it with the audience, and that's a beautiful thing. And if somebody else wants to come on and debate that, that's cool too. Ultimately, I think it's important to always put out every side of the story. And just because my views on something are conservative doesn't mean that I don't give you the other side of the story. That's why you always hear me playing audio from Nancy Pelosi or from Karine Jean-Pierre or from Joe Biden or for anybody else. Because, and as long as, more than I want, right? I'd probably want to pay 15 or 20 seconds, but I'll play a minute and a half to give you the full context of the statement. And I think it's important that the audience hear both sides of the story. And I reached out, at least to one of my booking producers and asked him to extend an invitation to Rudy Giuliani to join us if he wants to talk about this. I'd love to have him, and that offer still remains. But I agree with you. People should be able to be outside of radio stations. People should just be able to say what they want to say. Whether it's Rachel Maddow saying we're going to censor Trump and we're not going to let him talk. You deserve to know more. All of that being said, I think people let people say what they say and let the people decide, Gil.
One quick thing. I hope Donald Trump makes Rudy Giuliani his attorney general. And we'll see the fur fly then.
Amen to that. Gil in Manila, Philippines, listening online to richvaldez.com. Gil, I love to hear from you. You sound terrific, by the way. I hope your family is well. Godspeed to you. Folks, we're taking a quick pause right here. Coming right back to the rest of your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, we continue. Now, speaking of Rudy Giuliani, his former lawyer, Bob Costello, who also represented Michael Cohen back in the days, realized that Michael Cohen was a fake, phony fraud and doesn't represent them anymore. And he was answering some testimony, some questions from Congressman Matt Gaetz. Listen to this.
Is Michael Cohen a liar?
That doesn't begin to describe him. He lies at every opportunity when it's in his favor. And I mean, I could, if you had a half an hour or 45 minutes, I could start to list the many lies that he told us.
Well, let's just triage them. Is there a single branch of government that Michael Cohen hasn't lied to?
Gee, I think there isn't.
Right. I mean, you really have to work hard to hit the hat trick. I mean, it's one thing to lie to investigators, and I guess it's another thing to lie to Congress, but to lie to investigators and then Congress and then courts.
Don't forget the judges.
Yeah, the judges.
He lied to the judge, too, when he pled guilty.
And it's just so odd. I mean, it's not every day you see someone's former lawyer having to come forward and say, I regrettably have to inform the Congress, the court, whomever, that my own client, I am aware, is a liar.
Thank goodness he was foolish enough to execute the waiver of the attorney-client privilege because he was trying to implicate Rudy Giuliani and myself in a crime, which was absurd.
He even lied about that. He even lied about trying to turn on you, and I guess his lies are defied by his other lies and the writings and the paperwork, and this liar should not be able to hold our elections hostage.
That, again, I think speaks for itself when your lawyer, because Mr. Cohen waived the attorney-client privilege, gets to speak freely. It's a bad look. It's a bad look, and I don't think he's going to do so well for this case. Let's go to the phones real quick. Claudette is calling us from Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA. Claudette, you're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for taking my call. As it relates to Mr. Biden's crew not wanting a live audience, it's clear, it's obvious to me anyway, that they don't want a live audience up close and personal will be able to see for themselves that the man is medically, physically, and mentally incompetent. And all the gas that he does, that a lot of the times that the cameras cover up and edit, the live audience will be able to pick up on all that. His memory lapses I think that's the main reason. And I think Republicans should reject that. They should stop giving the Dems everything they want. They're behaving like spoiled brats. Now, my concern about this so-called secret recording that Cohen is claiming, and they were even able to mimic Mr. Trump's voice. I think that recording should be examined because it's clear that AI now is being used. And I really think that that's an AI recording, and it really needs to be examined, especially in light of what Mr. Costello was interviewed by someone, and he said that it was Cohen who had concerns about the testimony and the Stormy Daniels thing. And I'm wondering if the defense attorney for Mr. Trump are going to be looking into the source of that recording and to analyze it to see if it's really authentic, which I don't think it is.
Well, Claudette, thank you for that. I would say my observation of this is I think anything coming from Michael Cohen should be examined. However, I haven't heard anybody on the Trump team challenge the veracity of the audio because all Trump says is, let's do it or let's check it out or whatever it was. It was a very innocuous statement that he made. They tried to make it this big gotcha. It really didn't turn out to be a big gotcha anything. If anything, when your lawyer's recording you, again, it seems like a breach of the attorney-client privilege. It seems like he's spying on the president or his boss, at least at the time. And I think it doesn't lend anything to his own credibility. So I don't think Trump admits to doing anything. He says, yeah, go for it, or let's do it. It doesn't seem incriminating in the least to me. So I don't think it's fake. I think it might be, and it's very sloppy at the end. So it sounds like he cut a piece out or he tried to edit it for brevity or maybe for clarity or who knows, maybe he tried to doctor it himself. But it doesn't sound really incriminating. Now, if it was really juicy and it said, had Trump's voice and yes, let's do it. We hate Stormy. I did it. I'm guilty. Then I would say absolutely check it out. Make sure it's authentic. But I don't even hear Trump saying that it's not necessarily the real deal because it really isn't a smoking gun in any way. But very good observation. A good observation on the debate as well. I think you're spot on with that one. They don't want to see Biden shuffling his way up to the debate stage. They just want him to be able to deliver a couple of lines and then say, he's the president. He's busy. He's got to go. We're out of here. And too many witnesses if you have a live studio audience. Claudette, excellent call. Thank you so much. Love your accent, by the way. Big shout out to WGKA in Atlanta. Claudette, call back anytime. I got to take a pause right here, but we're coming right back with the rest of your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, we continue with your calls. Let's go to Newport, North Carolina, WTKF, and check in with Larry. Larry, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Yeah, but after the testimony in Congress today, let me get this straight, Rich. The U.S. government, FBI, told Michael Cohen, you better lie about Donald Trump and make up stories about him or your wife will go to prison? Rich, have you ever heard of anything like that?
White Boy Rick. Have you? There's a great movie. It's a true story. White Boy Rick out of Detroit. You got to check it out. It has nothing to do with politics and everything about how the FBI intimidates people and creates one crime to solve another crime. I have heard of it, sadly, and it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. This is what they did to General Flynn. Michael Flynn was all over the place talking about a million different things until they went after his son. The minute they went after his son, he shut up. He shut up because they said, we'll put your kid in jail for 25 years. He was willing to bite the bullet, but he wasn't about to let his kid bite the bullet. And look, I can't blame him. This is how they play. It's a very vicious game. They tried to do the same thing to Don Jr. Thankfully, he understood things a little differently, and he has a little different level of grit. And he was like, screw you, let's have this fight. And I got to tell you, they play dirty, very dirty, and it's a shame. Larry, thank you for the call. Very astute analysis, and you're right. We should all be outraged at that. Folks, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I am Rich Valdez.